What's going on, everybody? We are back with another ranking of every single card in the color Amethyst coming out in set 5. On this channel, we are ranking every single card separated by color. We have already covered Amber, Steel, Sapphire, and Emerald, and now we're doing Amethyst. Before we get into the rankings, let's do a quick overview of what Amethyst is best at. I'm not going to say that Amethyst is only good because of the bounce package, but it shows up in almost every single Amethyst deck. The bounce package consists of the Merlins and the Madam Mims. The Merlins give you abilities when they enter and exit the battlefield, and the Madam Mims let you bounce them back to your hand in order to be reused multiple times. The other most important strength in Amethyst is card draw. Card draw is very prevalent in Amethyst. There's a lot of different cards that give you card draw, either a character that enters the field, or of course, singing friends on the other side. Amethyst characters are usually rather frail, but make up for it with an enter the board ability or a very high lore. Now that we have a quick intro on what Amethyst does, let's go into the card rankings. Starting off with the first group, the Trash Bin. The Trash Bin isn't necessarily a bunch of completely useless cards, but they're not going to be meta breaking in any way. First on the list is the Nock Mythical Spirit. 6 cost, 5/5, it quests for 1 lore, and it has the ability when you play this character, you may move up to 2 damage counters from chosen character to chosen opposing character. There's not really much to say, it's very weak, it's expensive, and the ability is mediocre. Next up, Archimedes Exasperated Owl. 3 cost inkable, 2/2 with evasive, and quest for 2 lore. It is a fairly good stat line, but since it is just so vanilla and it's a 3 cost and not a 2 cost, it doesn't really see a lot of value when you run it into a deck. Earth Giant, Living Mountain, 4 cost inkable, 4/5. They're trying to make a downside out of having better stats by allowing your opponents to draw a card. However, it's just still not that strong, and there's a big problem in Amethyst where there's so many powerful 4-drops that this card is just not going to fit anywhere. White Rabbit, Royal Herald. It is a vanilla card, 3 cost, 3/4 with 1 lore. I don't see it. It's not a lot to say. Louisa Madrigal, Entertaining Muscle. 6 cost uninkable, 4/8. That quest for 3 lore. It's another vanilla card. And again, you don't really want to be paying 6 uninkable for just a regular standard vanilla card, even though she does quest for 3 lore. Archimedes Electrified Owl. 5 cost, 1/4. Shift 3 Floodborn, evasive, and Challenger +3. Questing for 2 lore. It's still very weak, even though you can get it out on turn 3. Being able to Challenger +3 is okay, bringing it up to 4/4 when it attacks, but it's still 1/4 when it's your opponent's turn, and they can literally baby Sisu this card. So I don't think that it's very good, but I do love the enchanted card of this. Monstro, Whale of a Whale, 5 cost, inkable, 5/6, 1 lore. Another vanilla card. King of Hearts, Monarch of Wonderlands, 4 cost, inkable, 1/4. Tap this card to chosen exerted character can't ready at the start of their next turn. The thing about King of Hearts is that you would have to tap him to use the ability, and that hurts him a lot, just because 1, he has to stick on the field until he can tap, and 2, since you're tapping him, you're not questing, which loses you 2 lore, so your target has to be really, really good in order to use him properly, and I just don't see him being very useful. We Know the Way, 3 cost inkable. It is a song where you shuffle chosen card from your discard into your deck, reveal the top card of your deck. If it is the same name as the chosen card, you may play the revealed card for free. Otherwise, put it into your hand. I don't see how this can be useful since you're required to shuffle your deck beforehand. There is no way to stack the card on top of your deck since this has to fully resolve before you activate it. So you pretty much are just dependent on using a 1-character deck, say Brooms or Maleficent or Queens or something along those lines, and you're still at the mercy of maybe a 50-50 chance at most. So this card is just not consistent at all. Retrosphere, 1 cost item, but you have to pay 2 to use the ability. Banish this item, return chosen character, item, or location with cost 3 or less to their player's hand. See, the thing is, Befuddle does this ability for just 1 cost, even though it's only cost 2 or less. But at the point of the game where you're going to want small game bounces, like to hit a Daisy Duck, for example, you don't really want to wait until turn 2, and that wastes all of your ink for the entire turn. So Retrosphere is extremely slow for the ability that it gives you. Half Hexwell Crown, 6 cost uninkable. Tap this card and pay 2 to draw a card, or you can tap this card and pay 2 to discard a card and exert a chosen character. Both of the abilities are very good, but I don't see a reason why you would wait until turn 6 just to get a machine that can draw a card sometimes. Elsa's Ice Palace. When you play this location, choose an exerted character while this location is in play. That character can't ready at the start of their turn. I love this card. I think it's a really unique ability. Well, not unique, there's other cards that do it, but the fact that it's on a location is really cool. But 3 cost uninkable for a location that only has 4 health is really weak because it can get foxed, it can get Maui'd, they can get goaded. There's so many cards that can just attack it. Then along came Zeus. There's so many cards that can get rid of this very easily that it's not that great. There's not going to be any sticking power whatsoever. Unless you play the wall or something. That will be the last card in the trash bin. Let's move on to the budget bin, where we have a slightly better category of cards. They may not necessarily be meta breaking, but they might find their place inside of competitive decks with the right combos. First off in the budget bin is Maleficent Formidable Queen. It is an 8 cost uninkable Floodborn. It shifts for 6. When you play this character, for each of your characters named Maleficent in play, return a chosen opposing character, item, or location with cost 3 or less to the player's hand. Obviously, the ability gets better the more Maleficents you have on the field, so this would pretty much have to be used in a Maleficent-based deck. Also, I don't really like the fact that the ability works off of other Maleficents, when ideally you're going to be wanting to shift this character onto a Maleficent. So essentially by shifting, you are getting rid of one of the chances to trigger the ability. Merlin Turtle. When you play this character and when he leaves play, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put 1 on top and 1 on the bottom. He does quest for 2 lore. I like the ability. I think that it is a little bit underrated. I think that if you were to use it with, say, Bruno Madrigal, then it could definitely get some combos for you, just let you see on top of the deck and be able to name it. However, in terms of the other Merlins, you already have Goat, Rabbit, and Crab that people are running almost at 4 each right now. So Turtle just doesn't have any space right now. Olaf Happy Passenger, 9 cost uninkable, but for each exerted character opponents have in play, you pay 1 less to play this character. It is a 6/6 with evasive and quest for 3. One of those cards where if you get it out, it is completely game-changing. However, there is a lot of removal on your opponent's side, so you're spending so many resources to get this card out. And if you ask yourself, how many times does your opponent have, 4 or more characters exerted in a single turn? Unless you're facing aggro, this is going to be very difficult to actually get out. Maleficent Vexed Partygoer, 3 cost inkable, 0/4. Whenever this character quests, you may choose and discard a card to return chosen character, item, or location with cost 3 or less to their player's hands. I think this is an amazing ability. Discarding a card is, in Lorcana, discarding a card for a cost is very, very expensive, but being able to bounce something away back into their player's hands can be very helpful, especially in the late game when they're spending that 8 or 9 ink to play these expensive characters and items. Magicka Dispel Cruel Sorceress. During your opponent's turns, if an effect would cause you to discard 1 or more cards from your hands, you don't discard. The thing about this card is that you would only ever use it if you're facing Emerald. That's the only color where this card would be useful. Otherwise, it is a completely dead card in your hand. I would rather, instead of having a card that stops you from discarding, have a card that lets you draw a card, such as Merlin Rabbit, because drawing a card does the same thing as stopping you from discarding, but it's useful against every single tech, not just Emerald. Maleficent Vengeful Sorceress, 2/2/2/2. It's a vanilla stat line that is fairly decent. However, there's so many 1-drops that do this now that there's not really any reason to run a 2-drop with it. Rafiki Shaman Duelist. It has Rush, and when you play this character, he gains Challenger +4 this turn. So essentially, he's a slightly cheaper Maui once. I like this card. I think that it can definitely see play just like in 1 or 2 decks if you want a really aggro thing. However, most of the decks that would run a Rafiki also have 4 foxes already, so it's competing with that. Maybe if you want 6 different threats that can hit for 4 or 5 damage, you would run Rafiki. Otherwise, he's just decent. Hypnotic Strength, 2 cost, draw a card, chosen character gains Challenger +2 this turn. This is an amazing card, actually. It barely didn't make it into the top 10, but the fact that you draw a card means that it replaces itself. That means the action is very good. And giving a chosen character Challenger +2 is one of those things that's going to be very important in this meta because it'll let you attack Daisy Duck on turn 2 with your 1-drop. So if you get both of these cards in your hands, then you can attack Daisy Duck and get rid of it before it can just start questing for a ton of lore early on in the game. Finders Keepers. Pay 5 to draw 3 cards. Is it too slow? Some people are thinking so because you're already running 4 copies of Friends on the Other Side, which is cheaper, and a song. So do you want to pay 5 raw ink just to draw 3 cards? Some people might say yes. It could be good, but I think it's like surprisingly not that good. This may be controversial to not be in the top 10, but Gathering Knowledge and Wisdom is a 2-cost uninkable that just says gain 2 lore. The problem with this card is that an aggro deck that is going to run this card already has a problem with uninkables in the deck. Also, they'd much rather have a character on the board that quests for 2 lore at this cost rather than having a card that does it, because a character can quest more than one time, whereas this is just a one-time card. Magical Aid, 3-cost inkable. I think that some people are sleeping on this card. A chosen character gains Challenger +3, and when this character is banished in a challenge, return this card to your hand this turn. I'm thinking that this can be used on something like a Snake, as Snake crashes into a character, and then Snake can get bounced back into your hand in order to play it onto the field again once you have your goats and your rabbits out. So I think that it actually has a lot of potential, or maybe it can be like in an aggro deck where you just want to get rid of something real quick and then play a 1-drop again. I think that it can be good. I think it has a place, but it's not top 10. And finally, the last card in the budget bin is the Library, A Gift for Belle. It's a 3-cost location with 1 movement cost and 8 health, has 1 lore. Whenever a character is banished while here, you may draw a card. The only reason it's not in the top 10 is obviously because the Queen's Castle already exists, so it's fighting for that slot. However, I've already seen a couple deck builds that sub in the Library for Queen's Castle instead, and there's some uses for it. Say, for example, you're running an aggro deck. It's a little bit better in an aggro deck because it has a little bit more health, and you can move the characters here to make your opponent have a choice. Do they want to attack the characters to get rid of them and stop them from questing, or do they stop the location so that they don't let you draw cards? So I think that the decision for that is a little bit better. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see how this card goes. Now the moment we've all been waiting for, let's talk about the top 10 cards in Amethyst coming out in set 5. First up is Anna Eager Acolyte, 3-cost uninkable with 1/3. When you play this character, each opponent chooses and exerts one of their ready characters. Being able to exert an already ready character is already a very good ability, and the way that this ability is worded means that it gets past ward. So if your opponent is greedily keeping their Cogsworth ready, then they're forced to choose the Cogsworth because it's their only ready character. This is an amazing ability, and it's also a target for the Floodborn Anna that we're going to talk about later. Number 9, Gale Wind Spirits. 3-cost inkable, 1/2. When this character is banished in a challenge, return this card to your hand. What can I say? Aggro decks love this card. You can't really get rid of it because every time it gets banished, it's just going to go back into the hands and end up right back onto the field, questing for 2 lore every time. So either your opponent is going to waste resources and characters to attack this card continuously, or they let it stay on the field and quest a lot. So it's a good card for those aggro decks, and I think that they needed a card like this in the 3 slot. Number 8, Bruni, Fire Salamander, 4-cost inkable 2/2 with evasive, and when this character is banished, you may draw a card. So you are getting such an incredible amount of value from just this little guy, right? He quests for 2 and has evasive, so that's already pretty tough to get rid of. So you're getting all this lore, and then as soon as the opponent finally decides to get rid of this card, you get to draw off of him. So very solid combo. Amethyst Chromicon. It is a 2-cost inkable. Tap it for each player to draw a card. Giving your opponent a card while you also get a card is just even, but since it's your turn, you have the advantage of getting that extra card and using it immediately. So this is a card that can stay on the field for a long time and continuously give you some card draw. Also, there's some decks that I've seen already that are using blue and amethyst for items in the same way that blue and red have been used for items. So this card runs perfectly in that deck because the amount of draw power you get is insane. Number 6, Cogsworth Illuminary Watchman. 1 cost, 1/1. When you play this character, chosen character gains rush this turn. I shouldn't have to explain to you how powerful it is that this character can give rush to a character, but not only that, it can get bounced back into the hand by all of the many, many purple cards that can do it, and it can be reused again and again. There is actually an infinite combo with this deck. If you are running, I think, Dr. Facilier and Shere Khan, then this card can actually get you infinite lore and win you the game. Not a very consistent combo, but it's possible. Number 5, Genie Main Attraction. 7 cost, uninkable, 5/5. While this character is exerted, opposing characters can't ready at the start of their turn. The only reservation on this card that makes it somewhat balanced is the fact that you have to wait a turn for it to really unlock its power. But other than that, your opponent is going to be very locked down unless they have the right cards combination in order to get rid of it. Unfortunately, it does die to something like Then Along Came Zeus, so I don't know, oopsie. I just spent 7 ink to play this card, bye-bye. But the ability is very powerful, so against any matchup that can't get rid of it, this card wins games. Number 4 is the other legendary, Camillo Madrigal, meaning that neither of the legendaries made it into my top 3. Camillo Madrigal has the ability whenever this character quests, you may gain lore equal to the lore of another chosen character, and then you return that character to your hand. Great thing about Camillo is that he can combo really well with the top cards of blue. So if you're running a Blurple deck, this card can run very, very well, where it can combo with Tamatoa, it can combo with Mufasa, it can combo with Sheriff of Nottingham. There's a lot of great top-end cards that Camillo can combo with, and blue doesn't really have a lot of ink restrictions. It can get to those high characters very fast. So I think that this card has a place there, and I really like it in this deck. Number 3 is Madam Mim Elephant. I don't think that purple needed another bounce character, but here we are. I don't think that this card is good enough to run 4/4/4 of all 3 bounce characters, but it is very powerful. I've seen a lot of decks that are using at least 2 Madam Mim Elephant because it's, first of all, a great ability to bounce a character, but also it's a 3/7 body. So you get all of that into one package with a very good ability. This card is going to be used in almost every purple deck unless it's like very, very, very aggro. Number 2 is Elsa the Fifth Spirit. 5 cost inkable, 2/5 with rush, with evasive. When you play this character, exert chosen opposing character. It's basically Maui that can attack a ready character. However, it only has 2 strength, but I don't think that really matters because if you are able to exert a chosen character, you likely have another character on the board like a fox or something that can also hit it immediately. So the fact that an opponent can play a really powerful card and then on your turn, you just have to play Elsa and then ram your head into it is incredible. Thank you all for watching this long. We finally got to number 1, which is Ana Mystical Majesty. 7 cost, uninkable Floodborn, and it shifts for 4. When you play this character, exert all opposing characters. I mean, didn't we just talk about how the Ana that is 3 cost has a great ability? So you play the Ana with 3 cost with a great ability, and then the next turn, you play the Ana for a shift 4. Now you have a 4/5 body on the field on turn 4, and all of your opponent's characters got exerted so that you can attack them and completely clear their board. Or even if it's later in the game, you can do the same thing. Also, since this character targets all opposing characters, it bypasses ward. If your opponent is using a Cogsworth or a Scar, or back in set 4, using Bucky, then this card would completely negate the ward and exert it anyway. And best of all, this card is only a rare, and it comes in the starter deck. So, this is going to be an affordable card. Yippee! And with that, we are done with our ranking. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, have a good day.